gotta get started. All right, let me turn that on. Okay. All right, are we live? I think we're live. Yes, awesome. Hi everyone. This is Paul Kajeji for cgcookie.com. Hopefully, we'll be doing a few of these on a regular basis. And so, if you want to be notified, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This is where I get to tell you about. Let's see if this plays behind me. Yeah. Alright, so what you're seeing here is a teaser for my new course that's available on cgcookie.com as well as Blender Market. So if you're already a CG Cookie member, you'll be able to access this course right now. And if you're not, why not? You can also purchase it on Blender Market as a one-off thing. It is not coming soon, just letting you know it is out. But what are we talking about today? We are going to be talking about the line art modifier. Just reading a couple of comments here. Sad times, I'm just thinking about going to bed. Really sorry, blackout creatively. I will try to be on about an hour earlier next time because there's a whole daylight saving thing happening now, which actually puts us in a better time difference. I'm just going to turn that down so I'm not so hot on the vocals there. But you can catch this later on. It's only going to be about half an hour, and we should be able to cover everything in that time. So, let's talk line art modifier. What is it? How does it work? Well, I'm just going to bring up this default cube, this default general setting for Blender, which is only slightly modified to fit my head in this corner over here. To show you how it works. It's something that's a really easy thing to apply. We'll see that we've got the usual scene collection, the collection here by default with everything in it. I'm going to just camera, light, control select those and bring them out of the collection. So all we've got in that collection is this cube. And in my viewport, I'm going to go Shift A, and under Add, under Grease Pencil, we've got these three settings here, which is line art for scene, collection, or object. If you've ever added an image reference, you'll know that it doesn't really matter which one you add because you can always change the settings. It's the same with this particular modifier. So I'm going to go ahead and select Scene Line Art, and right away, we'll see that the line art modifier has been applied. But what has this been applied to? It's actually created a new grease pencil object called line art. It's got a layer called lines, and it's created a material called black. It's doubled up on this just because I've got some residual material from practicing, but let's just pretend that you didn't see that. And we've just got this set up right here. And so what it's doing is it's created a grease pencil object to apply this modifier to, because this is a grease pencil modifier. If we go into the modifier properties, you'll see that there is the line art modifier here. The source type is set to scene, just as we'd set it. It's set to its default layer called lines, and it's got a default material. And right away, we can start playing around with it. We've got some settings for line thickness, so you can actually increase or decrease the thickness of those outlines. It's basically freestyle, or what was freestyle, or what still is freestyle, but you can interact with it right there in the viewport. And if you've got a simple enough scene, it's pretty instantaneous, it's all in real time. So this will allow you to add line work. It will allow you to select different types of edge types. You can create a contour, a silhouette, an individual silhouette. You can't see the difference right now because we've got these other markings ticked. Silhouette and individual silhouette are slightly different. As you can see here, the silhouette is only silhouetting the shape. Now, if I was to duplicate this cube And let's just move this back a little bit. So there's a little bit of an intersection, right? What's going on here is that the silhouette is silhouetting everything that it is looking for. And right now, the source type is set to scene. I can change that source type to say collection, right? And the collection has those two cubes, but of course I have to tell it which collection to enable. And so now, same thing again. But if I change it from silhouette to individual silhouette, this is what happens. Each object in that collection is silhouetted. And so this is a really cool way to get some outline shapes in there. Now, what about all those other things that I had unticked? Well, first off, we've got this thing called crease threshold. And this will find any face that is below, I want to say, 140 degrees from another face. And so obviously a cube, everything is 90 degrees away, so that tracks. If I drop that to below 90, see, they disappear because it's looking for a threshold that is 85 degrees or below in this case. And as soon as we go 90, boom, there it is, right? So I'm just going to leave that on its default. It sets it to about 140 because if you set it to 180, then like everything gets creased. And by default, you sort of don't want this to happen. Case in point, let's bring in a Susan monkey head. Let's see now. Just going to grab this over here, or maybe let's delete that default cube. All right, you also see that it sometimes does a little bit of updating. Right, but here is the Susan monkey head. Right. Also, where that line art modifier is doesn't really matter. It can be in the collection, usually puts it right in there, but it can be outside of the collection. So long as the source type is telling it what to draw the line art on, it can sit anywhere, because right now it hasn't actually applied anything to it. This is just an empty grease pencil object with a modifier. Now, the crease threshold, that's where I was. So I can decrease this until I get a point that I really like, or I can increase it until I get the kind of look that I want. Right. So at 180 degrees, all the faces are detected, because if you think about it, anything that's above 180 degrees just basically goes the other way, and 180 degrees is flat. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. So it's only going from 0 to 180. It kind of makes sense. Gonna leave this at thank you, William. He's got the right idea, liking and subscribing. Then we've got things like intersections, and intersecting parts of, say, a mesh that doesn't have consistent topology. Let's say we've got a mesh intersecting with another mesh, sort of like the Susan monkey head has. It's going to detect those collisions in intersections. Material borders is fairly self-explanatory. If we had two different materials, you will etch an edge out between those materials. So, for example, let's subdivide this cube, okay, and let's see. If I go edge, and I'm going to do an edge ring select, and if I look at the faces here, no, there we go, and select that face. Right. Right, we've got this material on that side. I'm going to add another material, new. I'm going to give this a slightly different color, something really obvious like this red, and I'm going to assign it. Let's go into here. Right. So now we have two different materials. That edge is 180 degrees. Quick question, Blender 3.3? Yes. Yes, this is where we're at. Although I think 3.1, 3.2, I'll have to check, but most of these settings are already in there. It's just got a few little bit of under the hood cleanup and stuff like that at the time that we get to 3.3. But you can see that these material borders, right, toggling that on and off, you can actually get an edge between different materials. Edge marks is really cool. So if we mark an edge in our edge selection menu, Do I have to go ahead and do this? So let's say I went loop cut here and select this edge, go to my edge specials menu and go, well, let's mark a freestyle edge in there, right? And let's go back to our modifier, edge marks. There we go, right? That freestyle edge marked edge now can be detected by the line art modifier. And we can also allow this thing called overlapping types. And so if an edge or a number of edges have more or one of these types of filtering, it will also etch out an edge. And so that's kind of the real basics of it. But I want to bring this a little bit more advanced. So why don't we jump into another scene? I've got this wonderful model created by Jonathan Lampel from our Press Start course, in which you get to model this really cool Game Boy type device. And I've already created a line art modifier, but I've done a few extra things. And what we could do is we could probably take this step by step. So you can see that I've actually got a couple of line art modifiers there, and I've also got this thickness modifier on here with a custom curve. What's that about? Well, how about we create a brand new line art modifier with everything inside this console collection, so we can sort of see where we're going. So we can have more than one grease pencil object. So I'm just going to go here, scene line art. All right, so already this is a very small scene, so the default thickness is very, very large. So we're just going to just fix up a couple of things. We've got this black. Yep, we've got lines. You know what? Let's leave it at that. Yeah, just get that material in there as well. First thing, obviously, we want to do is we want to decrease that line thickness to something more manageable. Now, it's still looking a little fat, and that's because in scale proportions, it's obviously in world space on the stroke thickness. So we can actually drop the proportion or thickness scale quite low. I think 0.1 is as far as it'll allow us to go. So I'll do that on the actual grease pencil object. Now go back to my modifier and maybe increase the thickness a little bit. Now everything is very uniform, and sometimes you might want a little bit of thickness and thinness in there, and so you can stack modifiers on top of this line art modifier, hence the thickness modifier. I'm going to click on uniform thickness. I bring down that thickness there to something a little bit more manageable. But influence, we're going to make sure that it's got a particular layer selected, and I'm going to tick this custom curve. Why? Because this is what will allow you to simulate sort of like a brush stroke. So right now it's consistent, but if I decide to alter this, right, and we go into some of these curves, yep, here we go, here's a curve, right, starts thin, gets thicker around the middle of it, and then ends thin. And you can customize this curve to something that's a little bit more organic, or, you know, have it thicker on one end or the other end. And what this means is that every line that is generated now will have a more organic shape. And that's just by stacking on this thickness modifier on top of the line art modifier. Oh, there's an option for a modular line like the calligraphy freestyle option. Oh, yes. Okay, cool. Guess I answered that question. But what if we want different line thicknesses? Let's say we wanted a silhouette on the outside and we just wanted thinner lines on the inside. Could we do something like that? Yeah, we could, by just basically duplicating the line art modifier. And so I'm going to do that right now. So let's say that this is all the contour lines. Let's see what edge types we've got. Yep, we've got contour, intersections, all of that is ticked. We'll just leave those at default. And we will, instead of adding a new one, we can duplicate it. So we can keep all of those settings and just change a couple of those settings. So I'm going to go on this little specials menu on the side here, duplicate, and we'll call this outline. Right. Now we'll change this one. We'll keep the source type the same, but what we'll do is we'll create a silhouette of everything, and we'll untick everything else. Now when we increase this line thickness, it's just going to take a little moment to update, but it will happen. You're going to happen, right? Going to happen. Don't make me a liar. Do I have to disable one of them? Oh, it's there. It's there. Oh, that's right. Yes, because we had a very thin line. And I think I want to put this on top or below. Yeah, yeah, there we go. All right. The thickness will modify whatever is above it. And so what we want is just to have this outline here. Individual silhouettes, contour, silhouette. All right, this is going to... it's not doing the silhouette as I wanted it right away. Allow overloading types, geometry processing. Is it under there? No, it's not. Okay, I think it's just got to do a bit of an update, which sometimes the outline modifier has to think about it before it does anything. Yep, here we go. So I've brought this line back in. So now we've got this line art, which is all of the stuff that's etched inside the silhouette. There and there, and we've got some thicknesses around there. And then we've got this thickness modifier on that. And then we've got this bit here, which is the overall outline, which we can control the line thickness of, right? So we can get a really nice shape over here. Now, we can even add a second material. So let's say that this was an in-game object, or we want that kind of look. Well, why don't we go ahead and add another material? I'm going to choose this black 001 and change this to white. So it's just really, really obvious, and I'm just going to change the coloring of this base color. We'll go back to our modifier, and under the outline, we can now select this material. And now what we've got is this outline over here, which is a different color from the interior stuff. Now, yeah, I think I want that behind, and to be honest, I need to figure out the real settings for this part, because I think there is a way to bring it back or forward. Just don't know. I didn't do this for the demo. I'm really, really sorry. So I don't really want to fluff around because I don't have much more time here, and I want to show one more example. So it'll probably be somewhere in these other settings, which are a little bit more complex, and I don't exactly want to go into them just yet. So look, let's put a pin in that, and I'll get back to you on this sort of line thickness modifier here. All right, so already by adding more than one instance of the line art modifier, you can select different modes or filters or whatnot and get different type of line work. And you can also select different source types such as scene, collection, object, right? So a single object, for instance, would just be one particular part. All right, now this has so far rendered in pretty close to real time, but what if we have a fairly complex scene? So I'm going to bring something that I created earlier again, this scene here. All right, this has got a lot of objects, and what we're looking at here is something with a lot of modifiers as well, such as a mirror and an array. We've got this light shape that's got a different material again, but we're just sort of keeping things basic. We've just got this one material here to worry about, and I want to create a new line art modifier. So let's go Shift A, and this one I will make a collection line art. And when I select that, it's got the scene collection, but what I really want is the scene objects collection. Why do I want this? Because I have this object called lights, and obviously these really stark lines on the lighting doesn't look very realistic. And so what I can do is I can bring this object outside of the collection that the line art modifier is looking at. And when it updates, it's going to switch those things off. So I'm just going to bring down the line thickness. Please let me know if anything's chugging, just because my computer is starting to make noises. That's because this particular scene is fairly complex. So I'm just going to increase that thickness a little so that we can see it. But already, if we zoom in, you can see that the lines on the lights have gone away, have disappeared. Now, in rendered view, we should get some nice light play. Yeah, there we go. All right. So I really wanted, what I wanted to do on this scene is get some lighting that filters down through these two main light strips and up through the floor. And so I've already created these two light shapes. Now, I'm going to swing into 3D view real quick. Chugging along strong. Okay, cool. Thanks, Amber. Right, and now you're actually going to get a sneak preview of what the line art modifier looks outside of the camera view. And we'll get to that in a second. I've placed these two lights. There's a area light up here and an area light below. Okay, and you can see that the line art modifier doesn't exactly look great on everything. I mean, if I spin around to the other side, where are the lines over here, and why do these lines look like they're stretched back here and everything like this? That's because it uses the camera data to generate that line work. This means that, well, it makes sense from a rendering perspective, right? You are going to be rendering through a camera, and so if I move that camera, it will update. Let's do that now. Let's select that camera, and let's just rotate it slightly. Right? It's gonna chug. Right? But look at what it's done, right? It still looks correct on the inside of the camera, and there's some sort of a I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Amber. Passepartout. Is that right? Where everything outside of the camera, there's a certain level in which it will overshoot, but then you can sort of see where that ends on creating the line work. So I'll just undo that. So we've got our original view there. Now, this is applied, and as a modifier, if you've got all the shapes and you want to render everything, you can go ahead and hit that render button. So I might do that now just to see what this looks like. And I'm rendering a fairly yeah, chug's a great word, isn't it? A fairly high resolution here so that I can zoom in. What have I got here? About 400%. That's what I've done. So I can sort of zoom in and show you what's going on, right? You can sort of see how that lovely line work interacts with the lighting. We've got this glow, which I had enabled. I'm rendering through Eevee. So I've got ambient occlusion in my, what's this, render properties, and I've got the bloom filters on. So this is not composited, this is in-scene effects, right? But we've got this wonderful interplay of light and shadow and line work and material. But what happens if I decide to say, okay, I don't want to render that scene. I want something like this, right? Just the line work. This is a really, really big caveat here, okay? I've told Blender not to, or to exclude that. Okay, no, we want to see it in the view layer, but we want to disable it in the renders, Right, let's just disable the entire collection in renders, and so we're excluding it from the view layer as well. And I will just drop down the render size so this renders a little bit faster. And let's go ahead and render this, right? Nothing. Why? It's still sort of a post-process. You need something for the line art to be generated on in order for it to render. So how do we render just line work? Well, that's unfortunately a bit of a destructive method. What do I mean by that? I mean that we have to apply the modifier. We have to go to our little specials menu and go apply. Now that line art modifier is lines that have been baked onto the grease pencil object, which means a couple of really cool things. One, these lines are now editable. So if I go into edit mode, right, I can select some of those points and individually change the properties of one of those bits of line, right? Yep, there's some questioning going on there. Yeah, I think the question's answered, right? But what this means is that now that everything's baked down, I can very comfortably disable that from rendering, and when I render it, the line work will render, okay? So hang on a second. Cache, don't have to apply the modifier. I'm going to try this right now. Let's do this, because this was the one thing where I was fiddling around with it, and let's go to undo until we get our modifier back. Let's see, there it is. Right, cache. Where is my cache? Processing. That's what I was thinking. Another method could be exporting the grease pencil object as SVG. Yes, but you know those are all destructive methods as well. Why can't I see cache? I saw it before. I think I know what you're talking about. Damn, I'm going to... it's not under bake. Under bake. Alright, let's do it. Under bake. So we just go bake line art, is that right? So we just go, let's just do it all. And now let's try this again. Fingers crossed. Hey, we gotta say it's under bake. Yep, cool. I'm just going to, obviously it's doing the baking process because it's a fairly intense scene. Hopefully we will get that. How about them Cubs, eh? What's going on in the world? Tarzo's still a thing? Come on. This is the part that I really don't like. Continue without clearing? Do I have to do that? I want to continue. Yes, it's in a 3D software. Okay, I think my Blender might have crashed. But, okay, I'm going to try this and then do another render. But, like, we are sort of coming up out of time. But I sort of wanted to show you some of those methods in there. So, hopefully, this is what allows us to keep that line art modifier and do a render without destroying the line art modifier. Subdivisions that won't reflect in the bake, but mostly it bakes work. The bakes should work for animation. Yes. If you do bake line art all and you've got an animation, it will bake all the frames of line art. This scene looks great every time. What does line art mean in this context? It means the etched out lines. It basically detects all the edges of something and determines where it should draw a line, a grease pencil line. And so this is really good for non-photoreal texturing or things to make it look like a comic style. Speaking of which, while this is working, I mentioned panels. At the conference last week, I got a copy of the Final Panels comic that you get to print at the end of the panels course that I'd sent off to Wes, and he'd brought it to the conference last week. And boy, I'm really impressed with how it looks. I wish I could show you a little bit larger, but yeah, Kablam did the printing on that, and it looks really good. The bake will only work for one frame. For animations, you have to keep the modifier, unfortunately. Yes, all right. But bake line art all should bake it for every frame, I believe. But okay, look, I've got line art's only at 28%, so this is this is going to take a while to bake in on this scene. I should have done it on maybe this one here. So let's try it. Maybe I can do it on this one while that's chugging away. Let's go to bake, bakeline all. See, bakeline all does all of the keyframes. Did you see that along this dope sheet timeline here? Now let's disable this and let's do a quick render. It worked. Genius. Thank you, 30% salt. It's 30% salt, right? The percent isn't some, you know, when you have the little... Never mind. Thank you so much. Okay, that really answered a really important question. So by baking, what that means is that you can test it on a render, and then if you don't like it, you can continue to modify the line work. Once you're happy with the line work, now I can clear all of that baked line art. Yeah. Okay, so Amber, I think we are out of time. I'm imagining we are. So yeah, look, thank you all for watching. This has just been a really short half-hour live stream, and yeah, any questions you might have in the chat, I think we'll have an IA procure some of those and perhaps turn them into the topic for a future one. I'm not sure if we're going to do this every week, you could correct me, Amber, or every couple of weeks, but we're still working out the kinks on that. I'm fingers crossed for every week. That'll be really cool. So yeah, look, thank you everyone for joining me. My name is Paul with cgcookie.com. Yeah, and the usual, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff.